Utopia, from the ancient Greek meaning no place, has been written of through the centuries. From the way it is approached during specific time periods, much can be gleaned about both the author and the current society's troubles and values. In The Tempest, Shakespeare presents a complex and highly individualistic view of utopianism, while still using a fictional location presented with the potential of containing a perfect society. Candide by Voltaire, while still perpetuating the idea of personal utopia, criticizes the Leibnizian philosophy that we live in the best of all possible worlds. In contrast to these two works, Brave New World shows the workings of a functioning utopian society in order to explore its consequences. The Tempest uses the island to express a potential utopia. However, the characters not native to the island are shown not able to achieve it because of their ties to civilization. Their desire for power in particular is proven to isolate them from the magic and the potential of the island. The characters of Caliban and Prospero particularly illustrate that contrast with their differing backgrounds in relation to the island. While both of them are shown to desire control and power there, Prospero viewed that as his rightful situation because of his previous position in society, while Caliban seems to only desire that power after he is enslaved by Prospero and because of the Duke's outside influence. Caliban essentially sees power over the island as a way to get back to his previous way of life. The utopian qualities of the island pass Prospero by exactly because of his control of the island's magic and inhabitants. His actions are shown by Gonzalo's speech to be in conflict with the idealistic view of utopia. Letters should not be known, riches, poverty, and use of service none, but nature should bring forth. Furthermore, his enslavement of Caliban, and particularly Ariel, conflict with the natural balance of the island. Because Caliban himself is rather a subject to the island's magic than the one perpetuating it, he is viewed as capable of attaining that utopia, which is further explored by his speech in Act 3, Scene 2.
Be not afeard. The isle is full of noises, sounds and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. Sometimes 1,000 twangling instruments will hum about mine ears, and sometimes voices, that if I then had waked after long sleep, will make me sleep again. And then, in dreaming, the clouds methought would open, and show riches ready to drop upon me, that, when I waked, I cried to dream again.
However, it is through his attempts to gain power over the island and over Prospero that he is essentially ostracized from the potential of gaining that sense of content from the island, and as a punishment is banished to society. Though the island cannot serve as a utopia itself unless it is restored to its natural balance, it serves as a way to restore this balance within the characters. By the end of the play, the island and its magic have brought the characters to redemption and rewarded them with a personal balance and content. Since the personal utopia in The Tempest is presented as a resolution and reward for the character's repentance, it is viewed as only a natural progression. Utopia in the literal sense, however, is presented as something much more unreachable by mortals. Gonzalo's speech in Act 2, Scene 1 particularly illustrates it with his hypocrisy. As Antonio sums it up, the latter end of his Commonwealth forgets the beginning. As Gonzalo begins and ends with naming himself king, yet still preaches of no rank. Even though the cost of utopia is not elaborated on in the text, the sense that through the achievement of personal utopia inner balance is reached, however there is nothing left to aspire for, is illustrated by some of Prospero's final words.
And in the morn I'll bring you to your ship, and so to Naples, where I have hope to see the nuptial of these our dear beloved solemnized, and thence retire me to my Milan, where every third thought shall be my grave.
Candide, or All the Best, contrasts with The Tempest in its representation of the real world rather than a fictional location in order to show its dystopian and destructive elements. Through the character of Pangloss, Voltaire mocks the Leibnizian principles of absolute optimism by using the horrors Candide goes through to prove the dreadful nature of the world. Through his introduction of the city of El Dorado and its utopian qualities, he contrasted with the misery of the world of Candide. However, through his prompt departure from the city, Voltaire leads to the conjecture that such a world is unattainable and must remain, as the meaning of the word itself, no place. Pangloss himself is put through endless physical torment, including being hanged, in order to further ridicule his philosophy. He is also put in contrast with Martin and his cynicism. However, in the end it is shown that a middle ground between the two must be reached, as the message Voltaire ends with is that we must cultivate our garden. Even though Voltaire does show his detestment for Leibniz's philosophy, he conveys that humanity must accept the horrors of the world and find occupation. Differing from the other two works, Brave New World completely deconstructs the idea of utopia. With the rise of dystopian and science fiction during the early 20th century, Brave New World takes the approach of showing a totalitarian society where humanity is controlled and repressed by pleasure rather than pain. By presenting humanity as lecherous and emotionally dulled with no desire to progress, Huxley manages to show the cost that an ideal and peaceful society can have. The character of Lenina serves as the representation of that society, and through her utter lack of progress or capability of independent thought or change, the reader is meant to feel pity for the New World. On the other hand, Bernard Marx represents the possibility of independence, but is ultimately cast out of the world along with others like him. John the Savage represents the ideals of both the Savage Reservation and the reader themselves. Through his love of Shakespeare, he illustrates the importance of art for individual development and the encouragement of independence. The conversation John has with Mustafa Mond in Chapter 17 about the abolishment of art and repression of scientific development, the cost of at Utopia to individuality and progress, is explained to the reader. The three works present different interpretations on the question of, is utopia attainable and at what cost? The Tempest shows that a sense of inner peace and a life of content can be gained through repentance and forgiveness, but also that with that achieved, there is no more to life. Candide argues against the idea of utopia and states that humanity must learn to suffer and find their own meaning to life. In contrast to The Tempest, it argues against the existence and prevalence of natural balance. Brave New World, on the other hand, focuses more highly on that cost of utopia rather than its existence, and shows that in order for it to be sustained, all further progression, individual thought, and desire must be abolished. While both The Tempest and Candide take an individual approach to the question, Brave New World tries to prove that the cost of utopia would be for one to live for society rather than themselves.
In my opinion, utopia is achievable. In order for utopia to exist, humans need to learn to live in peace. I believe that if jealousy and violence were eliminated and people genuinely cared about each other, we would achieve utopia.
I personally think that utopia isn't attainable because there are so many ideologies in this world that it's impossible to have one united theory that can unify all humanity. So as far as this goes, a human utopian society is nearly impossible. So perhaps if there is a higher divine power, it can unify all of us by giving what everyone wants and needs. And it's also notable that utopia means no place, and maybe that means that utopia is nowhere to be found.
Okay, I personally believe that utopia is a place where there's perfect harmony in between freedom and security and safety. So basically, the world we live in right now, and at what cost is it attainable? Well, at the cost of having only freedom or only security, at the cost of having anarchy or like a tyranny.
I think utopia is not attainable because even in the wilderness and in the animal nature, we see that there is no way. Utopia kind of immediately associated with the idea of equality, that it can be achieved only if there is mutual agreement on it. But even in the animal kingdom, we see that there is no equality. There is the lion, there is the food chain, there is the mouse at the bottom, and each one plays an important part. And there is no way that all of them can be equal in that way.
So, what would you like to ask me, Boyana?
Oh, is utopia attainable, and at what cost do you think it would be?
It's an unattainable goal. It's so far out of reach, and it's really a delusion of perfection.
Oh man.
So this delusion of the ability to reach perfection inspires people to seek something bigger than themselves, to believe in something, but it's completely unachievable. And any time anyone has attempted to achieve such, as we can see with the former Soviet Union, the utopia's end result was much more destructive and actually dystopic, if you look at it in any sort of perspective. And the product is the complete opposite of what they desire. So in the end, there can be no utopia.